All right, we are in episode 31 of the Being There, Done Map podcast. You are joined by Nikala Smith and myself, Matthew Deloya. First of all, Nikala, thank you for joining me. Merry Christmas. How has the holidays been treating you?
Thanks, Matt. It's great to be here. Christmas was really great. Like, it was nice to finally have some downtime and just spend it with my family. As I mentioned to you before, I've just come up to Karratha to come visit my sister. But Christmas Day was all my partner's family, my family, and just eating way too much and doing as little as possible, which is really nice.
Lovely. That's awesome. What was your favourite meal over the Christmas?
Bit boring, but I just love the seafood, like the prawns. That's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
And my uncle did like a really good pavlova, so that was really hit the spot for dessert. So yeah, prawns and pav, which are a pretty Aussie combo.
Yeah, nice. So I'm originally from Adelaide, and because all my family's all stuck over there. I missed out on the seafood part of this year. Yeah, I was quite disappointed usually the prawns and all the mussels. So yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I'm still able to go down to the wog shop down in Fremantle and pick up some rabs. So I'm able to cook some rabs. I just slow cook some beef cheeks in the tomato sauce as well. So bit of a combo there, which was beautiful.
Sounds like you had a good spread there.
Yeah, it was just
as well.
Because it was not too bad. It was just my partner and I were just down here together. Stuck down here in Perth, so we couldn't really go anywhere. And we were able to go down to the beach in the late afternoon, and then we cooked a barbecue for dinner. So
and when it's just the two of you, you can just splurge a little bit more and treat yourself to all the kind of more gourmet dishes.
Yeah, Casey, she follows this guy on Instagram. He had this recipe of this salad, and she was making. She goes, seems like there'd be quite a few servings in here. And it was like 6 to 8 people, and I was like, oh, maybe having that for the next week.
Yes, leftovers.
So again, thank you for coming on and being able to connect and see your stuff on Instagram. Just give everyone who's listened to the podcast a bit of a background on who you are, where you've come from, and what you're doing now on Instagram through the social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I operate Thinking Rewired, which was inspired from, I guess, my background and, what I felt I wasn't getting as an athlete. So for context, I was a professional netballer, played for Perth Orioles, a West Coast Fever. I was quite, I guess, a naturally gifted young athlete. So I was playing professionally with Perth Orioles at the age of 16. Which, is quite a huge achievement, but then also a lot of pressure and expectations. So when I was about 17, I was invited to live at the AIS as a full-time scholarship holder, which, was an amazing opportunity. And for me, what I thought I needed to kind of elevate my game to the next level. As I was already playing in the competition, kind of put it upon myself to be one of the, the starting players and one of the key shooters in the team and, potentially an opportunity to be captain. And again, just putting all these unrealistic or unnecessary pressures on myself to the point where as the seasons started to commence, I would just get so nervous. It's like, and when I say nervous, that sounds quite light. It wasn't just a few butterflies. It was, really severe anxiety that it was kind of taking up my whole day. I would just think about shooting. So shooting for me was, I guess, where I added my value and where I put my value on in my game. If I wasn't shooting well, then I wasn't playing well. To the point by the time I'd get to training, I couldn't feel my hands. And, as a shooter, that's kind of essential. So, shooting a lot of air balls, and that kind of thing. So, after some time from being a starting player, I was now spending a lot of time on the bench, which for me was just as nervous because I was worried that, we'd be winning by too much or losing by too much, that, I might get put on or someone might get injured. And I guess at this point, I would see sports psychs and that kind of thing, but I don't think they quite understood how severe it was for me. Persisted through the season. I continued still playing for a couple of seasons and I guess still really unpredictable, not really getting any support outside of my game mentally. And then it was in 2015 when I had a season in the UK, and same thing again. So just, really severe anxiety, didn't want to play because I was just, felt like I was constantly letting people down. And it was at that point that I decided to stop playing because it's putting way too much stress on my body as well with, just constantly being in that nervous state. So then, I started to get into a lot more self-development work. And that's when I realized that, I didn't do anything to manage my mindset, or, I didn't know that this was the thing. And all the unhelpful thoughts that I was having, like, they're not true, and I don't have to believe all the things that are going through my head. And that's when I started speaking about my experiences and how I was feeling on the netball court. And a lot of athletes would then reach out to me and say that they were feeling something similar, which was a shock for me, because these were players that when I looked at that, like on the court, I would never have put the two together. So I think it just goes to show that we all kind of have that little battle that, is not visible for those around us. And that's kind of when Thinking Rewired came into play. And I guess I believe totally that there's a place for sports psychs and that in the field. I think it's absolutely necessary. But I think where I come into it is just providing tools and information to athletes to give them, a bit more support along the way. So it either reduces the time that it takes you to get to that point, or you'll just have these strategies in place to kind of manage those situations a little bit better. And over the last few years, it's really started to grow. And I think a lot more clubs are a lot more open to, looking at their athletes from a holistic approach. And I'd really like to start with, the grassroots and the up and coming, because, by the time you hit professional, you either have access to it already, or we've already lost some great athletes along the way because they've just not been able to manage it as best as they possibly could.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke to last episode I had on Nikala Bowen, and she's 20 at the moment, and she plays AFLW, and she was talking about when she was younger, she ended up stumbling across working on your mindset just through her own interest in the whole nature. So it's good kind of going back to the grassroots, because it helps them get a head start on, not kind of starting it too late. They're getting out ahead of the curve and not kind of getting lost, like you said, to the mindset and to the nerves.
100%. And as you get older, it gets harder to make these changes. Whereas if you start embedding them quite early, then it's less kind of ingrained in your brain. So, you're more malleable and you're able to adapt a lot easier.
Yeah, and it's taking smaller steps. You don't have to make such big changes, or it doesn't feel like it's such a big change.
Absolutely. And all the stuff I teach is like, all I ask is you take 10 minutes out of your day just to kind of do something consistently. So it's all about that consistency, because I guess with your mindset, it's not tangible. It's not like trying to put on muscle or lose weight or put on weight. You can't see it happening, so you don't know that it's working. So it's about embedding these consistent routines that, just trusting the process and knowing that when you look back in that 6 to 12 months that, you're more calm in situations where you may have been a bit more nervous, like you're more prepared and ready for games and that kind of thing. So it really is not that hard, and none of the stuff I teach is rocket science, but it's just as humans we don't do it. That's the problem. And so it only takes 10 minutes and you'll start to see little small shifts.
Yes, and even through your social media, through Instagram, here you have little tidbits, you have your little quotes that you put through on your Instagram as well, which helps kind of recognize where you're at during the day and kind of just take a bit of a break and kind of think, reflect, and then you can go about through the rest of your day as well. One of your funnier posts I just came across before, I was just kind of refreshing, was your the high knees, how many times it was 516,000 high knees, and it just made me reflect back, and as a coach, how many times I've had to repeat myself in the same session, how many 550,000 times I have to repeat the same set, how many sets? 8, how many times athletes, 10, how many reps of this one, Maddie? I'm like, it's 10. I don't know. How many times you have to keep asking me?
I know.
The program,
and honestly,
it's up on the whiteboard.
It's so weird because I actually came back to WANL this year. So I've been out of the game now for 8 years. I came back to the West Australian Netball League this year, and honestly, nothing's changed. It's like the same drills, the same warm-up, and you're just like, here we go again. It's just like riding a bike.
Yeah. Well, the thing, even the same thing with me is how many times I've had to run the same warm-up, and even for me, I lose my enthusiasm to run a warm-up because there's only so much really how many things you can change in a warm-up.
So many variations.
Yeah, so many variations. But then, it's kind of a different thing I've done this year. I've kind of made 3. So we do 2 training sessions a week, and I've written up 3 different warm-ups, and they're kind of like a mix and match of like the same, but they're different. You know what I mean? So just kind of keep them fresh for myself and then fresh for the guys, but the same, really the same kind of it.
Absolutely. And I think, absolutely. And I think, like you said, there's only so much you can do. And even I think just the smallest tweak can still feel quite new when you're so used to doing the same thing all the time. So even sometimes like obviously in netball, like you run up and down the court, sometimes we just change it up and go the width of the court instead of the length. And it just, change of perspective, changes anything, just because, when you've been doing it for so long, it can just get so monotonous. And so I think that's a really great idea.
Probably going back to when you were young and playing netball, when did you kind of recognize there was a point where you needed to go and seek guidance down the strategy of mental health or kind of your mindset training?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like we're talking, like when I was at my worst, I would have been 18. So that is, we're talking over a decade ago. Anxiety wasn't spoken about back then. And if you saw a psych, it was taboo. It was like, oh, what's wrong with you? You're a bit weird. And I think even over that time where like I was, my hair was falling out. I was so nervous. Like I was starting to bald in my hair. And I think I saw a sports psych maybe, I think twice over the course of the year, which is obviously not enough. But even then, like it only probably really dawned on me when I started doing my own self-development work that, I was in a really bad place and I needed a lot more support. And but I just don't either. I didn't portray it clear enough that I was, in a really bad place. Sports should be my outlet of enjoyment and fun, but it was my place of anxiety and stress. And even now, like when I play, I still do get, nervous and anxious, but I guess I have a few more strategies in place that allow me to get on court and, perform at a reasonable level. In answer to your question, I don't think that really came until after I stopped playing, quite some time after. At the time, I don't think there was enough awareness around anxiety and that kind of thing. And I certainly wasn't, clued into it enough until, as I said, after I stopped playing, which makes it hard because you just feel like this is normal and that, you're the only one.
Did you, I guess, when you were at your worst, was it a kind of a fear of playing that kind of drove your anxiety? Like, what was kind of the root cause of your anxiety, do you think?
Yeah, so for me, it was definitely just around my shooting. My general court play was fine. Like if I could play wing attack and not have to shoot, there wouldn't be a problem. But when it came to my goals, I just put all my value, I guess, on that, and just not wanting to. I had high expectations and just not wanting to let people down. So, my goal was to shoot 80 plus. But I think anyone that is a shooter would know that as soon as you miss a goal, then you start thinking about, oh, well, I can't miss the next one. And then obviously the more you're thinking about the things you don't want to do, the more those things start to happen. So, I'd be lucky if I shot 50% in a game, which is not good enough. And then, you are already thinking about that before you even start the next game. You're like, well, I want to do better and I don't want to miss. And what if this happens? And what if I don't, what if I get shooting air ball? What if I don't get the rebound? And for me, it was, it is literally just the goal side of things. And I think, as a shooter, that's just where I put all that pressure and that value in my game.
Did you feel like maybe the goals that you set were unachievable? Was that kind of what also drove a little bit of anxiety?
Probably. And I think I have quite high expectations on myself. So even now I find I'm still quite hard on myself. Like if I do a bad pass, I can stew on it for like a couple more plays. And it's like, just let it go, move on. Like everyone, before you even step out on the court, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss goals. But I think it's what you do next. It's, do you, find your player and try and get an intercept and, then it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Or if you miss a goal, like are you getting the rebound or again, trying to defend and get the ball back? So you're doing the things that to try and counteract when things don't go to plan, because then they're not always going to go to plan. So I think it's your attitude of then what you do next is the key.
I think probably one of the most undervalued traits is, like you said, being able to let things go, especially in the moment, like when it's the heat of the battle, per se, and then you make a bad pass, not be able to stew on it, and just to kind of take yourself out and just focus on the next thing. That's so underrated, because I think it's important that you still you set high expectations of yourself, but in the moment you don't want to put yourself in a hole. It's more about reflecting back and thinking the things you can do better after the fact. But in the moment, it's being detached is more probably better word of better phrase to use.
Absolutely. I think any player that has the ability to do that will go far, because as I said, you're always going to make mistakes. But if you've made a mistake and then you're beating yourself up, your head's down, you're not then chasing up the ball, and you're letting your opposition have a free run down the court, then that's not really helpful for your team, is it? So it's when those players that can actually go, yep, fine, I made a mistake, doesn't matter, where's my player, go chase them up, and as you said, reflect, and I'll do better next time, and just keep trying, I guess, is the biggest thing.
Did you feel like, because you said you were 18, did you feel like you were kind of alone a little bit? Because I don't know, where trying to put myself where you were. Were you the only young, like were you 18 with the only 18-year-old there? Did you feel like you could share your experiences with the other girls around?
Because I was at the AIS, everyone in that particular team was under 21. So we were easily, because the Canberra Datas back then were only under 21 program, and we essentially got flogged most games, because we were playing the like your Sydney Swifts and Liz Ellis and Catherine Cox and all those players, and we were just kind of up and comers. So it's a really great opportunity for those players to match it with the best. Again, I just don't know that I think I would tell people that I was nervous, but I just don't think people quite understood. And even I have memories of my coach, who probably as well, you could see that, I'm not playing how I had been in the previous years or in the lead up to moving over there. But after games would make me sit me down and make me watch all the goals I missed in the efforts to make it see what I've done wrong. And to me, that is not the approach to go down, because then you're like, oh, well, shit, this is a problem, isn't it? Because I'm not, and you're reiterating and reaffirming and making me making me watch all the things I'm doing wrong. How about you try and build up my confidence and show me all the things that I've done well. So again, I just don't know that it was handled well. And as I said, we're talking 10, 15 years ago, where I really only think now, probably in the last couple of years, teams are like, we actually need to start looking after the mindset, because you could be the best athlete going around, but if you can't execute under pressure and have a strong, resilient mindset, then it doesn't matter how good your skills are, because I can go shoot out the back and not miss, but if I can go onto the court and can't sink a goal to save myself, then what good is that? So I guess in answer to your question, I just don't think I think I would have mentioned it to people, but I just don't think people quite understood how bad it was. And again, I don't know that I articulated it in a way that made it, seem serious.
It's interesting the way you said before. It was only recent over the last couple of years, even for myself, working in sport. I've been in sport for the last 8 years, and it wasn't really until I was working in the Samford in Adelaide, and our league team, we got Jenny Williams, which is, I'm not sure if you follow AFL, but Mark Williams, who was a premiership coach at Port Adelaide, his sister, and she's a psychologist, and she ended up coming to talk to the boys. She did a few after training type sessions, and she had a book, and essentially we did a few workshops and did some small little team games, bonding type stuff. There'd be one evening we did. Groups would divide up and they would do jigsaw puzzles and be the first one to, finish the puzzle, get a treat or someone. There'd be other different workshops. But, one of the other things she would say is you don't make mistakes on purpose. I think one of the biggest things with guys is when you get in the heat of battle, when you make a mistake, you tend to point and blame that person for a mistake. But really, she would say, they're not going to kick the football to the opposition on purpose. There's type of things like that. And because we had such a young group, I feel like she had such a big influence on them. And then we ended up not saying that she was a part of a group that helped us win a premiership being so young and such, kind of an underdeveloped type of team. You don't expect team with average age of 23 to win a premiership, but we did that year, and I feel like she made such a big impact there. But then, prior to me working with that team, I've barely seen anyone in a role like that before, which kind of opened my eyes to that. And then from there, I've been able to see things on Instagram kind of blow up, like pages like yourself. When did you kind of get into that, being able to sit down and be like, I'm going to take this onto a social media platform and kind of make a role for myself here?
Yeah. So I think I started Thinking Rewired in 2017. So then I was a lot more broad. I was just trying to do workshops with just, young women, probably more. And then, when I started sharing my netball stories and realizing that I had a lot of, former teammates and that kind of thing reach out and say that they really resonated, that's when I really started to niche down and gear it more towards just netballers. So now I focus on primarily netballers, but also just sports athletes as well, because I think it's all the same. It doesn't matter what sport you play. Everyone has the same kind of mindset obstacles. Probably I reckon over the last 3 years, I've really geared it towards netballers and athletes. Each year it just seems to be I'm getting a lot more traction, which is really good. Hopefully one day, I don't think this is ever going to go anywhere. That this will eventually be my full-time job, and if I just keep working away, and hopefully they're not all fall into place eventually.
Because it's interesting that a lot of your teammates came up to you and would say that they had issues themselves. It's almost like that they live. It's like it was a darkness, or they like a shadow that lingered over them that they didn't really understand or put like a face to the name type of thing. They didn't really know what was experienced. Like you had the same experience yourself. And
absolutely.
And it's you
just thinking that they're the only one.
Yeah, and you said obstacles I think is a really good kind of adjective to describe, because you don't want to kind of shy away from it. It's something that you kind of have to walk towards and being able to maneuver yourself around. Do you feel like that's kind of a way to describe, working on mindset?
Absolutely, because it's not something that you're ever going to completely master, or, it's never going to go away. You're always going to have unhelpful thoughts that go, comparing yourself to others. I'm not good enough. Am I fit enough? What if I miss? What if I don't perform? What if you're always going to have these thoughts. Fixed and growth mindset, your attitude, we always strive to have a good attitude, but, sometimes we don't. Like, things come up, we get triggered. We always can have the best intentions, but at the end of the day, our mindset obstacles are never going to go away, but we can either reduce the amount of time that we sit with them. You can feel sad or feel frustrated, or, you might get annoyed at the umpire. But then next time, maybe you won't react. And so you'll either reduce the amount of time that you sit with them, or have some strategies in place to help you manage those situations in a more positive way. So particularly if you're getting nervous before a game, and getting quite stressed, there's some tools that you could use that could help, make you feel more calm and focused. So you're not what ifing and thinking about what might happen in the game. Because we all know when we what if, we're not, what if I have the best game of my life? What if I, shoot 100%? No, we're thinking about all the things that can go wrong. And not quite hitting the mark. So definitely think obstacles is a good way to describe it, but we can certainly put some tools in place to make sure that it's not kind of dominating our mindset, and that we can actually kind of control it a little bit more. Obviously we can't control everything, but we can put some steps in place to make sure that we're managing it as best we can.
Because there's obviously no perfect way to tackle. There's no one kind of way to tackle mindset and even mindset training. How do you start off? Is it something like thinking about, your pre-game routine, or to make sure that you're ticking the boxes in your training? Like, how do you start off training your mindset?
Yeah, yep. So absolutely, there's no one size fits all. And so I have what I call like a mindset toolbox. So basically, it's an array of tools to draw on, either when you're feeling a little bit more stressed than what you might normally be feeling, or if you have a particular event, competition, or that kind of thing coming up. So in preparation for that. So as I said, none of the mindset toolbox tools are rocket science. They're all free, so there's no reason why people can't be doing them. But it's meditating. So blocking out 10 minutes in the morning or in the evening to really slow down your mind and get focused. It's being mindful, so you're focusing on the present moment, so you're not thinking about the future and all those what ifs again and what's happening. One that most people probably already do is listening to music. So if you're feeling calm but you want to be more pumped up, so then putting on some loud music. If you're feeling overstimulated, then we're putting on something that's a bit more slow pace, so then it kind of brings your levels back down. It's having affirmations. So whenever your mind starts to go down that negative spiral, it's just replacing it gently with some more positive or neutral statements, so that you're again just getting present. So all these little tools are just not that hard, and they're free and they're easy to do. But I just don't think either people are just, particularly the up and coming athletes, they're just not aware of them. Potentially coaches don't see the value in it, so they don't encourage them or carve out time before a game or something for them to be able to do what they need to do in preparation for a game. Or we just don't know about it. So it's just all those things to build yourself up and get yourself in the right headspace before you hit the court.
Yeah, you just jogged my memory when you talked about affirmations. And I had a podcast with John O'Marsh when he was playing at St Kilda. He and one of his buddies would have little triggers that they would be able to do to recognize that each other were kind of getting out of sorts, like in the game. So they would, one of them, he would like either slap his thigh, and then that was like a signal to the other guy to kind of, reset and to take care or bring yourself back in the moment. And then they would have another one for the other person, so they'll be able to work with each other, type of thing. And then in the team, they'll have like a buddy system. So whatever you had to have 22 on like playing the game. So they would have, pairs, or there might be a group of 3 or 4 that might all know each other's signals. So they're about to do it to each other. Yeah. So it's quite of an interesting thing that's kind of happened. I think they got that from Richmond. I think that he was telling me that. So there's kind of little things like that I've heard around as well.
That's so good. So like having an accountability partner. And I think particularly when you're on court or on the field or whatever sport you're saying, as soon as you see your teammate's head drop, if that's your buddy, then just that's your cue to really try to pump them up. And I do something similar. I call it quick fire focus. So, it's just a keyword or key focus that you want within a game. So for me, it would be like run. So if I missed a goal, my keyword was to run, to, find my player, try and get the ball back, hands over. So there's so many different kind of keywords that you can do. Like even it doesn't matter. One of my coaches, because obviously I'm like, I'd be so stressed if I missed a goal. She would just look at me from the sideline and say, it doesn't matter. And so my mantra was just like, it doesn't matter. So if I missed a goal, doesn't matter. Keep putting the shots up, find my player. And just knowing that you have that support from either your teammates or your coaches, it just instantly takes that weight off. Because if you're worried about what other people are thinking or that expectation, and knowing that they're still on your side, takes that weight off, and you're able to just get on with the job and not, be stewing about letting people down and not doing your role. But I really like that accountability one. I think I might have to steal it.
Yeah, they could go for it. I think it's all free, like you said. So it's where was I at? It's amazing how much it makes all of a difference. And you said as well, I think it was, you said you had 10, how many years off you had, and then you've gone to play back this year. And you said that you still have that same feeling about, missing shots and not making. It's kind of amazing. You can never really leave anxiety. Like you can never run away from it, I guess. So one of the biggest things that I always try to keep myself accountable or keep myself on top of was whenever I feel kind of that anxiety coming on, I just run, kind of have a head steam, like full steam approach, just run straight into it, and you kind of just approach it because there's no point wasting time around, or because it's not going to go anywhere, like you said. Is just kind of approach it and just kind of think it's there. You are. I've this issue, and now I've got to work my way through it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I guess for me, like when my anxiety hits a netball, the easiest thing is to not play, because then I don't have to deal with it. And I think for me, that was one of my biggest drivers to come back, because I still love the sport. I think I am still reasonably good at it. And I think that's my biggest frustration, is that the only thing stopping me is myself.
Yeah.
And I just would feel so, I don't know, if I was to look back and say another 20 years, I would feel really, disheartened to think that I couldn't have played the sport that I love due to my own doing. So I think a big driver for me to get back out and, play was to prove to myself that I can still play at this level. And yeah, I guess work along anxiety, because as I said, it still hasn't gone away. And you just have to, face it head on, and, work with it as best you can to continue to do the things that you want to do.
It's amazing because, like you just said before, you still think you have enough. You still think you got the confidence in your ability to play netball, but it's the mental aspect, or like you're almost not confident that you can execute. Is that kind of a fair enough? It's not like a conclusion.
Yeah. It's interesting, because it's like I know I can, like on a rational level. It's like I know I can play well, I know I can shoot, but then as soon as I get out there, it's just that self-doubt and that it's almost like it's just so ingrained from when I was at my worst, 15 years ago, that it just kind of resurfaces whenever I think about netball and that kind of thing. So I guess with the work that I've done, I've been able to get myself into a position that I can still play. And I have moments where, like, I'm just not thinking. I think that's when you're at your best, when you just play and you're in flow and you're not thinking about anything. Those are the days that I remember as a kid, where I just went out and played and just loved it. Like, I just didn't care, didn't have a worry in the world. And I think I know Ben Crow, he talks about that a lot in his work, is, thinking about your what you were like as a child and trying to reinvigorate that as an adult and reflect on that and kind of channel that when you play, is just, going out there and having fun. Because I think at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying it, then it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit.
How long did you have to think about coming back to playing netball before you actually decided to do it?
Yeah. So I stopped in 2017. I think it was about 2018 that my sister was playing. And she's always on my back about playing together again, because we used to play state league together. I get like long before, like when I was 16, 17, and her dream was for us to just be playing on the same team again, because we work quite well together. And I was really hesitant, and I said I'd come back as long as I'm not shooting. And so so her
little
team
game you play with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I said, court play, no problem. As soon as I'm in the goals, that's when the anxiety hits. And so I was really lucky to get a really great, Saturday club. The coach, who's probably been one of my best kind of mentors in terms of really encouraging me to, get my head back in the game. So Kim, she was amazing, and just put me in wing attack. And every now and then she'd be like, Nick, do you want to go into goals? And I'll be like, no, I'm fine. And then like a couple of weeks later, she'd ask me again. And if we were up by a lot, I'd be like, all right, like I'll do a quarter. And then it would be fine. And she really just kind of worked with me at my pace to kind of allow me to work into it. And then whenever I'd get into that little tizzy of like, getting anxious or felt like I was missing too many, she'd just be looking at me going, it doesn't matter. And so, I guess I played about 2 seasons with that. And then Josie Jantz, so she is a former West Coast Fever teammate, but she coaches the Southside Demons in the WANL. She kind of, toyed with the idea and kind of asked me if I wanted to play it, and I thought about it, and honestly, like I wanted to, but I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. Like mentally, I could feel myself getting anxious just thinking about it. And so I sat out for another year, just played Saturday netball.
Yeah.
And then it was this year I was like, oh, I think I'm ready. And yeah, so I think just the patience and just gradually building myself up, I think was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, gradually got there, and don't know how, but got co-MVP with my captain. So
well done.
had a
Congratulations.
reasonable season, yeah. And it still wasn't easy.
No.
But at least I can say that I've ticked that box.
Nothing ever is easy. How were the nerves the first kind of training session, stepping up into the big leagues again?
Yeah, I think training was pretty fine.
Yeah.
The first game, I was really nervous.
Yeah.
And I guess we had the added pressure of we had 2 other shooters out that game, so we literally only had me and another girl. So in my head, again, probably worst case scenario for me, it's like if I don't do well, again, so much pressure, there's no one to kind of back us up if we're not performing. I think for the first half of the game, I could have gone either way. And then I just said to my shooter, like, I just have to keep going to post. I'm just going to keep turning and shooting.
Yeah.
And then the second half, I just kind of got into that flow state, and we ended up having a win, which was really good. But yeah, definitely in the first warm up, I just remember feeling like so nervous and that sick feeling.
Did you ever play like any like mind games with yourself, trying to like, well, if the other 2 shooters are out and I'm the third to come in, I've got kind of nothing to lose. Like, you know, I've got, you know, the other 2 are out. I might as well just give my best effort, and if it's not good enough, then the other 2 coming back and they'll perform better. Type of anything. Yeah, like
I think probably for regular games I would, but because there was no one else on the bench that could come on and shoot, I felt that pressure, like, I have to be able to.
So,
So no, I didn't try that approach. I should have.
Do you feel like that's kind of, you know, that's like clutching at straws type? That's probably the last resort type of an approach.
As in, sorry, say that again.
So like that was like that one example that I just gave before. Is that kind of an approach that's clutching at straws? You know, you don't really want to have to be thinking. That's almost like a negative top of a loop, because, you know, you got the 2 best shooters are out, or the other 2 shooters are out, and I'm the only one left, and there's no one to back me up. Type of a thing. Is that kind of like a negative feedback loop type of a thing, maybe?
No, I think if that's what it takes to get you in that zone, to just be like, well, if I can just give it my all and it doesn't matter, then you go out there with nothing to lose. You're not thinking like, oh, what if I miss, or what if things don't go to plan? You know, you're out there regardless, so you might as well just give it your best shot. Why not? And then it might, like you said, it will put you in the better position to potentially get a call up the week after, if you're just playing out there like not careless, but like mentally careless, where you're just kind of doing what you want, and you're not worried about any kind of ramifications, because you won't be coming off either way.
It's interesting that we say you don't want to be mentally, you know, constricted when you want to play in this free flowing state. But when you're at training, it's all drilled. Like, you know, you need to make sure. I guess I don't really know the technical aspect of shooting, but you know, we're going to make sure you will have like the release angle, you know, whatever, the flick of the wrist. But when you're actually playing, you need to forget all of that and just play free. It's amazing how much of an impact thinking so deeply about the technical aspect can ruin you in the actual fight or flight aspect of the game.
100%. Like when you're in flow as a shooter, like you are not thinking about anything. You are just catching the ball, turning and shooting. So any kind of technical anything is just out the door, because you're just in such a autopilot that you just all happens. Whereas like when I'm in my head, I'm thinking about all those things, like making sure I'm bending and flicking and the wrist and all that. And that's when it doesn't kind of go to plan, because you're overthinking it, and you're thinking about all those finer movements with way too much detail. And when you're in flow and just, you know, in that rhythm, there's just no need. You've shot and practiced so many times that you just, you know, the feel of it and the flick of your hand and the little touches that you have on your fingers, just all happens. It's the best feeling when you can just turn and shoot.
Yeah, I can remember, because I kind of was reflecting back on the same thing, because I do Muay Thai training and I do sparring and do kind of match sparring type things as well. And the same, but we focus on our technique on the pads and on the bag. but when it's time to spar, it's more about free flowing and type. We call it like play sparring. So it's not really going out to knock each other's head off. It's more about picking the shots, get your timing right, and then. But then the same thing when it kind of doesn't go your way in the sparring, you're kind of getting a couple of shots on you, and you kind of start to think about how am I going to get one back, and then it becomes more like a war. You know, you're trying to go out to knock each other's head off, but it's more about getting back to the basics. Establish the jab is kind of the biggest phrase. So going back to the basics, getting working the angles of the ring and that sort of stuff. It's amazing. I was just thinking back to what I was.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's. Yeah, and I bet when you're in that zone, when you're in the in that flow zone, everything just kind of falls your way, and you just kind of can't stop you. Yeah, exactly. It's the best.
It's crazy how it all works. Do you ever in your own kind of mental mindset training, what are you kind of your key resources, your go-to? Do you have a podcast, do you have books that you go to kind of get information and help yourself, or do you have someone that you work with yourself?
Yep. So I guess I try to have my own daily routine. So like I will just from daily point of view, like I'll meditate daily. I'm probably I write my goals and like affirmations and to-do lists probably maybe 5 out of 7 days of the week. So that kind of keeps me focused and what I need to do, and I write my best self. So like, what does my best self look like every day? So they're probably the main ones. When I'm trying to play for competition, like I'll try and do a lot of breath work as well, because I find that really helps to kind of calm your central your nervous system. So I found that really beneficial. Like books, I love reading. I guess all kind of self-development books. The Carol Dweck Mindset's probably been one of my favorite. I'm currently reading The Slight Edge, which is very much about what I focus about. So it's not about making big drastic changes and flipping your life upside down, but it's just being consistent and implementing like small consistent habits that make little changes, but if you're doing them consistently, they're big in the long term. So I'm really enjoying that one. I love listening to podcasts. Probably my favorite at the moment is Imperfects, which is kind of not really super sports related, but it is mindset, and I do like a bit of comedy. So Brian Shelton's a good addition into that as well. That's probably the main ones, and I do see a psych as well, like when I need to. So every now and then I'll see a psych when needed, which I think is important that we talk about, because I know it's very taboo to say.
Yeah. Is it kind of the mindset training transcends sport also in a way? Do you also want to make sure, like when you're writing your goals, it's family related as well as sport and related to yourself, like in this kind of non-selfish type of way?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, everything. And that's why I kind of love the stuff that I teach, is it's 100% transferable into your personal life. And I think for some people, you say self-development, they might get a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. But when you do it in a sporting context, it kind of like is a sneaky way to do self-development, because they're obviously passionate about the sport and they love it. But then all those skills are completely transferable to their personal life. So when they're ready, then they can start applying that to their world as well, which is good.
And you say you write your goals. Do you kind of set goals that are short term and longer term, but have room for not meeting them? I don't want to say failure, because I think at the end of the time, I think you do end up reaching goals, but you might not set them in the time frame. You might not reach them in the time frame that you set. Is it important to set them, like make them flexible in quotes?
Yep. So I think in my workshops, that's what I teach. So you might have a time frame, but if you've not met it by that time frame, it just might mean that we've not allowed enough time. So if it's still something that you want, then you need to keep it as your goal and just extend your time frame. But yeah, like normally I usually write like my big picture vision. So like what I want in like 5 years. So then I'm constantly dreaming about the big things that I would love, in the future. And then I'll more start to write my daily like things that I need to do to kind of that are projecting towards that. and that's really what I do daily. But I need to do my reflection on the year that's been and start writing my goals for 2022. Do you do something like that for yourself?
No, actually, I was just thinking about that myself. Like, if I was thinking, if I would have written down my 5-year goals 5 years ago, I wouldn't have, had written down a podcast, run a podcast, move over to a different state. 5 years ago was 2017.
What can happen in 5 years?
Yeah, so I was thinking I would not have met anything I would have written for myself 5 years ago. So, do you ever, reflecting back, would you say that it's okay for things to change?
Oh,
in a
100%. Yeah.
If I was to reflect back, I would have been like, because I think it's important to be quite hard or quite, tough on yourself in terms of where you are, what you want to be, and how you want to kind of develop yourself. If I was being in that type of a mindset, I'll probably bury myself, make myself like feel down and be like, you haven't met your goals, you're a piece of shit type of thing,
Yeah, 100%.
I guess it is important to kind of have a screen to kind of say it's okay to change paths and to kind of chase different ambitions.
100%. So like you should definitely review, like you might set your 5-year goal, today, but you might want to reassess your goals in another month or so, and you look at your 5-year goal, and if it's still on track and it's still something you want, then great, you don't need to make any adjustments. But if it's not something that you no longer that you want anymore, then by all means, like, keep changing it, and then making sure that then we're changing our our longer term, short term, well, medium term, short term goals as well, so they're all aligned. So we want to make sure that we have a bit of a stepping stone with our goals to then hit our long term vision, because quite often we might say that we want to be in a certain place in 5 years time, but if we're not actually putting those steps in place, we'll look back in 5 years and go, why am I not where I want to be? And if you look at your pathway, you go, oh well, shit, I didn't actually put any steps in place to make sure that I got there. So that's why, it's really important that you kind of dream about what you want and then start working backwards and then putting in those daily plans. But I mean, I completely relate. If I'm 34, no kids, not married, if you think about what your plans were when you were a kid, you're like, and I think when you're an athlete, you put yourself on the same path as everyone, but by default, you're just always behind, because even with school, it took me 5 years to finish my uni degree. I think I was 25, where most people were wrapped up by 21, and you're just always on the back foot. They had careers in their mid-20s. I probably didn't get my career till I was 30. So it's like you see everyone, but I wouldn't change anything either, because I've got to travel so much, and I've represented my state, which not many people get to do. So it's kind of I might not have got this, but I've actually got this and this. So I guess reflecting and being appreciative for the things that you've achieved as well, because I'm sure you've achieved a lot over that 5 years.
Yeah, sure. But I definitely, into personal, I guess probably reflecting back, probably one of the biggest things that I kind of got out of this year, reflecting on the year that's just gone, there's probably been more of a realization of being able to just develop myself and become a better person, not so much career-centered approach, if that kind of makes sense. Because I think I spoke about in the last podcast, I had a bit of like anxiety about, I kind of got trapped in a hole about not kind of getting anywhere. And I feel like it was a bit more of I was chasing my own selfish ambitions from a career aspect, and I kind of let things go in like a family and personal kind of aspect. So kind of this year, starting this podcast, being able to talk to lots of different athletes and getting an insight into their own mindset, it's a bit more, and then even listening to other podcasts and reading a lot into the mindset. It's more about, not so much about career and sport. It's more about develop yourself as a person and grow up, but like develop yourself in a way that's you're improving on yourself in every aspect of your life. So like whether it's family, and then how am I going to become better? What am I doing to be better from a health wise, from partner wise, and even now I'm going to be a dad. So in
amazing.
3 months' time, I'll be having a little one. So it's more, not so much about me now. It's more about how I'm going to share lessons and being able to raise a child is
Little person.
changes you think, changes the way you think
Yeah.
about
And that's
life.
a huge realization. Yeah. Because a lot of people, I think, put so much focus on their career, but it's not necessarily something they love doing, and it takes up so much time. So to have that realization now and be making, like I said, not huge changes, but just little changes to do the things that you're more passionate about. And like you said, you're growing yourself personally. I think that's huge. I think that's worth more than any kind of money or career stuff that you can do.
And I feel like as well, like you said, how I think we get trapped as, we kind of get, especially when we're younger, going through school, whatever, they say there's stages of life that you kind of go through. And I feel like I got trapped of, finishing your 12, going into uni, and then once you finish uni, you get to a job. But like working in sport, it's hard to kind of get yourself in a full-time role straight out to, not many full-time S&C coaches that, take out uni students who have no experience, because, you got to work part-time at all different other places, and, you got to work part-time as a labourer as well. So, you got to juggle lots of different things, and you kind of get stuck in the grind of it almost. And then you blink and you're 27, and, your partner's like, it's time for kids, like, oh, well, I haven't got myself to, you want to get a house. I haven't got a house, I haven't got a full-time job in a professional sport. I haven't done that yet. So I've kind of got caught up in lots of negative loops. I haven't done any of this. And then once you get stuck in that mindset, then you stop training, you forget about training, you start to put on weight, you're not eating healthily anymore. Then it's like a spiral.
Yeah, just spirals. Yeah.
And then you kind of look yourself and go, we've kind of got, one of the things, I'm very self-critical, like I said before. And I think a lot of people, whether or not someone noticed that in me and didn't say anything, but I was able to look at myself and just kind of be hard and just not trying to let anxieties hold me back anymore. Just be like, it's not that it's not okay. Not that it's okay to not reach those goals, but it's time to reflect and just kind of be hard on myself and just have a setup, or have a more of a process and what I would need to do in my life. So get things back in order, like making sure I'm getting my daily workouts. And if I don't have any time, well, it's time to make a workout. If I'm just going to, if I sacrifice 1 hour of less sleep over the next couple of months, I'll have time in the future where I can catch up on that sleep. Not that it's okay to miss out on sleep, because you might get more chances of injuries and that sort of stuff, but to make myself feel better about myself now, I need to sacrifice an hour of sleep to get up at 4 o'clock to, get myself an hour of exercising. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of that kind of aspect.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome. It's then, like you said, just reassessing what you want and then making those little tweaks to make it happen. Because you don't want to look back and, 5 years time and be like, oh, I didn't do the thing. And then, but now, you've started making those little changes, which is cool.
That's one of the things that I've also noticed or taken notice is kind of getting back. I read this book by, it's called Tribes. I can't remember the author, but it's sitting over there in my bookcase.
Okay.
And they talked about how much, essentially the premise of the book, talked a lot about our tribal instincts and how much our instincts of a tribe back in, thousands of years ago, and how much we've gone away from all those instincts now, like, living in comfortable housing and all this sort of stuff. But they talked about how much our biology has not changed from thousands of years ago, but our social aspect has. So, being able to, get instant messaging on your social media and how the likes and all this sort of stuff, and how much, even looking back 100 years, there wasn't any of that, but we were still the same person as we were then. So just trying to kind of get myself in a mindset of spending less time, and so not spending less time, but being able to realize to get myself away when things start to get, when my mind starts to go racing just a little bit, and I start to get a bit too, my heart starts to race a little bit because I'm reading too many, COVID-19 messages on Facebook, or, how many cases a year, just trying to get away from it and just to go for a hard run and just to kind of bring myself back. Because I think a lot about that book was, as well as about how much when we struggled in life over the past generations, I think one of the examples they gave was in the air raids back in World War II, when London got raided. There was a lot of shelters that all the public went to, and one of the biggest things that the government at the time, they were all against it, And what they said was because I didn't want a bunch of people all living together and there'd be no kind of hierarchical structure. Essentially they didn't trust.
Oh,
They didn't trust the community to be able to work together to make it work.
right.
But they ended
Okay.
up going through with it. And then what happened in the end is that people were able to assume roles and assume leadership, and then ended up working out all together. So they ended up because they're all going through a similar
Like a
struggle.
traumatic event. Yeah.
So they're able to work together and kind of work it out. So it was that type of stuff was one of the things that interested me a lot. So I think it's
that's
one
really
of the things,
interesting.
thinking back on this podcast too, a lot of guests have come on, be able to share their experiences, I guess, if they've mental health, like their mindset, a lot of different a lot of different experiences, but they've kind of been the same. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So share their kind of their struggle, but they're all brought together, and this podcast brings them together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think everyone has a different story, but the themes are all always very similar in terms of like your mental health struggles. Like you're either feeling not enough or isolated or, comparing yourself to others. It sounds like, the social media thing that you're referring to before is like when you're scrolling and you're just seeing other people's success or, comparing people with where they're at, then that can be a really, I guess, negative impact on your mindset, because then you start self-loathing and thinking that you're not good enough with all the achievements that you've done. So social media has its place, but it's also a dark hole for a lot of things as well, which is
and then I guess
finding that balance.
Yeah, I think I get again as well, like reading, I guess it'd be newspapers and what people would say about you, or like would you think what other people would say about you, but it's also hard to be on the other side and be like, oh, forget it all, either because it's not like you live your whole life through sport. You want to like go and read a newspaper, or you want to go read through social media. It's you're not like a crab. You kind of want to have a life, and you want to follow people on Instagram. But then again, it's hard not to compare yourself to other people. It's how hard.
Yeah. And I guess if there's one person or one particular account that's really, sends you to that negative place, that's when you need to unfollow or mute them or something, because obviously it's not having the desired effect that, it may have it in the first instance. So I guess the one interesting thing I read is like we're 100% in control of our Instagram page, so we can choose everything that we consume. So if we want to make sure that it's the stuff that we are feeling better about ourselves and it's more positive, and assuming that's what you want, I guess.
But again, they've got that algorithm though on Instagram where you can, because even now, because I scroll through my podcast Instagram, and then once I've gone through the timeline and whatever, it gives me like suggested. Once I like scroll through the main feed, it gives you like suggested accounts to follow underneath. Like I don't even subscribe, not even follow these guys, but they're giving me their photos mainly. Mainly it's the blue tickers, but you come up. So sometimes you do have a choice. They will find you. But the funny thing, I was listening the other day that China, they have their own version of TikTok, and how they kind of regulate it, which is kind of interesting because the way that China works is because it's a communist country, they are able to control aspects of your life, and that the way they control the TikTok is they, especially with young children, after a certain number of flicks or scrolls, whatever you want to say, they put up like scientific, they might put information that's useful for kids. So it might be like an educational science, TikTok might come up every 3 scrolls. The fourth one might be as something that's informational for them to learn. Or after a certain number of scrolls after that, you might have 1 minute of like they might lock your account for a minute, so you have to log off and go somewhere else. And then they'll have messages like supporting communism and their country. So it's quite interesting how it's a bit how that, because it's the same thing over here. You get stuck scrolling. It's so half the time it's all crap, and you start getting into this deep hole. And it's, well, if they're so bad, but they're implementing something that's useful, so why don't they do that here? But then it's all about
I know. I wouldn't mind someone blocking my account for 5 minutes or something when I've been on there for too long.
Yeah, it's wild. Lots of stuff.
That would be handy.
So do you ever feel, that it's evolving? So the mindset coaching, it's evolving. Where do you feel like the next step? Do you feel like it's going to be a constant progression in terms of how people take it up and realize it at an early age? Or do you feel like it's going to plateau out and people are going to be, it's going to be education, so it's going to be like in schools or taught in schools?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Like I hope it goes in schools. I think that's more like teaching emotional intelligence is something that should be taught in schools. I think from primary school, it's hugely important. I hope that, you know, my space grows a lot more, because I would obviously love to expand a lot more. But yeah, I guess at the moment I do workshops with a lot of netball clubs and sporting clubs, and hopefully, yeah, I've already got interest for next year. So hopefully next year is a big year. But I'd also love to be able to do more online programs or one-on-one mentoring or group mentoring or that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm hoping that it's going to grow. I don't think it'll ever plateau out. I think mental health is only going to get, unfortunately, bigger as, you know, social media, and I think just the fact that we talk about it more. I think, you know, it was probably prevalent many years ago, but I just don't think people knew what it was, and there was no kind of platform for them to be able to talk about it. So yeah, I really hope that it does get introduced in schools. I know sometimes they do touch on like the fixed and growth mindset in schools. I know that is becoming a thing. But even just learning about emotions and, you know, unhelpful thinking styles, and introducing, I know some do meditation. So if it was something that was really across the board, all schools, doesn't matter where you go, that would be amazing. I would love for the sporting clubs to introduce like a mindset coach as a thing, as a regular thing. You've got your physical coach and have a mindset coach as well. That would be ideal, and I think it'll be needed. Like I don't think any of this is ever going anywhere, and if anything, it's just the need for having that balance, and the fact that, you know, mental health is so important. Without athletes, it doesn't, you know, you can focus on the physical, but at the end of the day, it's the holistic approach that will give the best outcome in performing athletes.
Do you ever, because I don't know, it's still hard for me kind of to kind of get my head around why people can't accept the whole mindset approach and how it does.
Yeah.
I guess there's like certain trigger words. I think, do you understand like what, you know, probably the question by asking is, why do you feel like there's certain trigger words that kind of turn people off the whole mindset? Like, you know, people might say mental health and like they turn their nose up to it. It's like a trigger word to them, right? You know,
I know.
Like, it's weird.
I 100% agree. Like, I reckon, as I said, like probably last year and this year is when I've started to do a lot more workshops. The year before, I really felt like a fish out of water when I was approaching clubs. I think, I don't want to paint a picture, but like if it's ran by, I guess, older generations, they were less receptive of, you know, having mental health conversations, or, you know, if I'm like, I'm do mindset workshops, I think they just think you're a little bit crazy, which is quite funny. But I think definitely when you're speaking to those generations of coaches that are, you know, a bit younger, they're more open to that, and they generally have a lot of things in place for their athletes. And again, that is a generalization. It's not always, but I think definitely our generation and, you know, probably a little bit older are more open to this, because it's been around for them and it's a conversation that's been had, whereas those that are a slightly older generation haven't, you know, been exposed to it as much, or it was taboo to talk about it and it's uncomfortable to talk about. So I just don't think that they're necessarily open to it, and for them, like, that's fine. I think over time it'll, you know, as things change and people move on and other people come in, then I think there'll be a bit more openness to it. But definitely at the start, even now, like sometimes with friends and stuff, I think they just think I'm a bit crazy, but it's like nothing I'm talking about is crazy, and it's, you know, hugely beneficial, and I get so much good feedback, and, you know, parents reach out all the time. And I think that the saddest thing is, or the hardest thing is, when people just reach out when, you know, people are already at rock bottom. So it's not necessarily a proactive approach. It's always kind of a bit of a reactive approach. So I guess
that's interesting.
I'm trying to create an inspired change, I guess, and I guess have those tools ready for when you need it. Because probably when I'm thinking back to myself, like I probably didn't really need it when I was 12, 13, 14, particularly on the netball court, maybe in my personal world. Although in saying that, I come across young girls now that really have that really bad negative self-talk already, and beating themselves up, can't find a good thing about themselves or what they've done. So I think generations are getting younger with all that more negative, whether it's body image, comparison, all that kind of thing. So I think, it's just so important to introduce it earlier, so that those athletes can get it, just the information, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, it's wild. It will. I think, like I said before, I think generation, the whole mindset, or kind of the whole negative self-talk or the negative self-belief that they have on themselves, which is becoming younger, because the earlier they get exposed to, I guess, social media, they're going to start comparing themselves to,
100%.
there'll be people on there who aren't, like, they put filters on that's not even their real photo. Like half the time it's fake, or it's,
absolutely,
it's all doctored that it's, it's not even the real person or the real photo.
Yeah.
They're comparing themselves to a AI image, like it's not real.
Yeah, it's not real.
So then it's skewed in terms of your expectations on what you are to look like, or how you're meant to perceive your lifestyle to be.
Absolutely. And one of the goal setting workshops that I do is we reassess all the areas of your life, and one of them is screen time. And it's always an interesting conversation when you ask them, what is your, when they have iPhones, how it gives you like your weekly screen time. Because like mine's probably about 4 or 5 hours, which I think is quite high. But some of these kids are like 24 hours or 40 plus hours.
A week.
And I'm just like, a week on their phone. And I'm like, because they will like get up really early and be on it for like a couple of hours before they get up. Or they're on it really late at night. And obviously they're on it 24, like when they're at school, just constantly. So I'm just like, that's like nearly 2 days worth of screen time in a week. Yeah. So when you're saying negative messaging, all that unhelpful comparison, things that aren't real, the perception, it's not helpful. That's when they need the thing from China where it blocks their screen time. Sorry, too long.
There's always one thing always some things we can learn from other places, isn't there?
Yeah,
there's always something.
Absolutely. Maybe not everything, but just maybe that bit.
There was a interesting post that came up on Instagram today from the Huberman Lab podcast. Have you heard of him? Do you follow him at all?
No,
he's a researcher that's out of Harvard, and he does a lot of podcasts on how to, I guess, a lot of physical health and how to kind of make yourself not a better person, but like better look after your physical health, I guess. And he does there's a few podcasts he's done about mental health, and then it kind of gets to the science of it all. And a lot of this post he just came up before, I was talking about the holidays and how to kind of stay in a routine. And it's all about making sure that your autonomic nervous system stays in balance. So when you're not going to bed at a regular time, and you're drinking lots of alcohol, you're not moving as much as you were before. You're not viewing sunlight early, because a lot of our cardiac rhythm, like viewing the day, we get tired at the same time, or you wake up at the same time. It's all to do with how much sunlight you view early in the day. So when the sun's rising, it's that orange type of light. That UV, whatever the scale is what sets that rhythm at a time that you're going to be able to go to fall asleep at the same time, and then start to get tired at the same time. So you go to bed, and then you wake up at the same time. So if you start to view light, in Perth, it's like 5:30. The sun's about to coming up. So if you start to view time, then you don't really need an alarm clock anymore. You cardiac rhythms in a cycle. And you're saying of this post is to make sure you kind of keep things in a routine over this time, so you don't get a jet lag effect, which is in quotes. So you can kind of get yourself in a feeling of drowsiness and sluggishness in this period, because things aren't in a routine. And your body, then you start to have that negative self-doubt, and all these negative mental health kind of thoughts come in, and then you kind of get in a bad in a bad cycle, a bad rhythm that can last,
Yeah.
couple of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and then by the time you check yourself back, it's 6 weeks by the time you're back into a new rhythm. So it's one of those things. It kind of I was reading it today before I started training. I was like, that's quite interesting. So Saturday, Sunday was Christmas, and Boxing Day was kind of relax and try to have a couple of naps in the day, and had a couple of favorites out of the favorites box, and some abs. And Saturday now it's your time to get back into kind of a bit more of a routine that's similar to what I used to keep.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that when you go on a holiday and you're like, right, I'm just gonna sleep in, and I reckon the first few days I probably am in that rhythm. So I'll wake up at like, I don't know, 5:36. But then like when you start actually waking up at 9 or 10, like you feel so much worse for it. Like you feel out of whack, and like you said, like that jet lag feeling. And sometimes it's just easier to keep your rhythm, your routine.
Yeah, it's amazing
for the long term.
It's all because like I said, it all just goes back to our biology when we were hunter gatherer type of stuff. Is to make sure that really we kind of developed into a society that needed to sustain living. We had to get up to go hunt and to make sure that we're providing for the tribe. And it's one of those things that keeps us going. We have to make sure we're moving through the day, making sure that we get our exercise in. It's one of the things I was just thinking about before, just kind of came to my head just now, is how you're talking about your position shooting, and all sports is all this fascination about accuracy. Like, you have to kick a football between 2 posts to get 6 points.
Yeah.
You have to shoot a ball in a hoop to score points. You have this kind of little bit of a thing for accuracy that kind of comes down to that hunter-gatherer lifestyle, whereas you have to kill an animal, if you didn't kill the animal, it was it's one of those things that you didn't feed the tribe, you didn't have food.
Yeah, you didn't have a good shot, you didn't get dinner.
No, that's right. And I always said that because fighting is probably one of the most tribal type of things that kind of develop, and I feel like sports all come from that kind of like lifestyle as well.
Animalistic instinct type thing to be the best and competition.
Because I did karate when I was younger, and then I kind of left that behind me when I kind of went to uni and all of that. And then I got into watching UFC, and I was like, my heart started to race a little bit while watching it, and I was like, this is something I can get into. It's one of those things. It's all pure emotion. Do you follow any sports outside of netball at all?
Not really. I used to be a really diehard AFL supporter.
Yeah.
I used to love the Eagles. I used to put my Guernsey and my jumper on and sit in another room to my family and just be like yelling. That was like the Ben Cousins era.
Not anymore.
No, I think once I started playing professionally, I was like, I'm idolizing these guys, but they're just like normal people.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so I watch it rarely. I'm obviously they're my team, but I wouldn't say I haven't been to a game for a while. And I keep a tab on like West Coast Fever and that kind of thing, but not really. I don't really have time to just be watching too many other sports, to be honest.
That's funny. Really funny you say you see them as normal people now. I had the same thing when I first started working in footy in Adelaide. Like there'd be a few guys who come out of AFL system, and they come and play in the sample, and they're just like normal people. But like growing up and seeing them as like these gods, they're just like normal people now. So now when I watch football, it's like I really want to get to know the person. So it's probably one of the reasons why I started this podcast as well, was just kind of deep in just get to know different people.
Debunk the myth that famous people are legends. Not that I'm famous, but all your other guests, just normal people.
It's one of the things, I feel like the media kind of, they put everyone up on a pedestal type thing, and then everyone idolizes them so much that when they actually see them in real life, they're kind of disappointed.
They lose it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
Because
definitely AFL, like that's obviously Perth, Adelaide. They've got 2 teams, so they do get idolized. Whereas, like at least in Melbourne, you can kind of get lost amongst all the teams. But when you're in those 2 states, you are treated differently when it comes to social settings and that kind of thing. But as you said, when you see them in real life, like you're either disappointed and you're just like, you're just normal. What?
Do you, if you were to go have dinner with any 4
Mhm.
people, who would you choose?
I did have a think about this because I heard you ask other guests on the ones that I listened to.
Yeah, I got to change it up. Everyone keeps listening. They know what they have to answer.
Yeah, so it's good. I normally don't have an answer prepared. I reckon Hamish, like,
Oh yeah.
so mine are Michael Jordan. I think that doco, I was just like, he is amazing. Probably Hugh Van Cuylenberg.
Oh, I don't know that name.
So he's from The Imperfects, and he's written gratitude, empathy, mindfulness.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe Ben Crow. Because that's the only one I can think of.
Was that 3? Was that 4? Hamish Blake.
That's 4.
That's 4.
Michael Jordan, Hugh, and it's a bit of a mix. I think that would be quite an interesting conversation. I think it would be quite fun, actually.
Where would you go? Where would you go for dinner?
Oh, this is a new question. I haven't prepared for this. Does it have to be within
no, anywhere
in Australia?
You go anywhere.
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I want to go to Hawaii, so maybe a restaurant there. I wouldn't know any names of any restaurants.
There'd be some local food. There'd be
nice. Just some street food. Yeah. Quite basic. I'm not.
You said that you've traveled. That you traveled a lot. Where was kind of the one place that stood out for you?
Definitely Turkey was probably one of my favorites. Turkey and Poland.
What was it about those 2 places that stood out for you?
I guess for both of them, like, you might have like a preconceived like idea of what the people might be like, particularly Turkey, I'd say. But everyone was just the nicest people. Like, it was honestly just, everyone was just so friendly wherever you went. Everyone was lovely. It was obviously so beautiful. And I did I don't know if you've heard of Cappadocia, but there's like a hot ballooning over these really uniquely formed rocks. So that's probably easily one of the best things I've done is hot air balloon over that. And Turkey's just amazing. The food's good, the people's good.
Was that a AIS netball trip that you had to go over there for?
Oh God, no.
Was that just a holiday?
That was just a holiday for sure.
Cool.
I always got gypped with the all the Australian teams I made. They always played like in Canberra or Melbourne or something. Yeah. Whereas the ones I missed out on went to like Jamaica. And they got to see a lot more than me. So no, I was pretty my timing with my team making was not ideal. So with netball, I've travelled to all of the states in Australia, and a bit of New Zealand as well, which has been good. Yeah,
New Zealand's lovely. Even though I've never been, the pictures look pretty nice, pretty green.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, very mountainous, and all the beautiful colours and the water, and highly recommend.
When you kind of go away for those camps, do they give you much time to kind of explore or to go do much things outside of? Because I guess they keep you all together and
not really. Like, particularly when we just went for games, you would often fly in the day before, and I guess you'd have half a day to walk around. So not too much. When we because we're from Perth and go to New Zealand, often we'd have 2 New Zealand games in a row, so we wouldn't fly back. So we would do a little bit of exploring then. When I was at the AIS, we did kind of a bit of a road trip, but honestly, it feels like so long ago. I don't really remember a lot of it, but we did do a lot more stops, and we were able to explore the country a lot more, which was good. But otherwise, kind of in and out, and you don't really get to see too much, which is a shame, but I guess necessary, particularly when we travel so far.
Did you have a moment, I guess, post your career and then starting Thinking Rewired, that you wanted to? This is what I want to pursue. Like a moment where you sat down, someone might have said something to you, and you were like, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Pursue. Pursue this."
Yeah, I reckon the hardest thing, like retiring or quitting netball, was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because it defines me. It's all people know me by. When people don't know me, it's Nikala the netball person. And when I stopped playing netball, I didn't know what to do. And I felt, I guess, a bit lost. Like I worked for ANZ, so I was working at the bank, but I still do, and I'm not overly passionate about it.
Yeah.
But it, pays the bills. And I guess for a long time I was really searching about what's that thing that I'm going to be just as passionate about. I tried flower making. I tried, I don't know, like multi-level marketing schemes with like health and wellness, but like that didn't sit right. I just, I was so open to just finding that thing, like essential oils, like anything. And then I did like this self-development workshop, and I was like, oh my God, like I just loved it. And then they had opportunities where you could kind of train to be a facilitator as well. So then, I went down that path, and, I was hosting a lot of like workshops at people's houses, and then I kind of had that moment where I was like, I'm going to, just niche it to netball, because, they say you need to focus on your area of genius when when you are doing something. And for me, obviously I knew netball inside and out. And I just felt there was a real place for it. And currently in Perth, I would say no one's doing it. So then that's when I was like, now I'm going to do it. I think I've always just been a bit of a slow burn, because I'm obviously still working full time. And I think, sometimes it takes me a while to believe in the thing that I'm doing, even though I know it's good, but it's trying to sell it to other people as well. So I've just been slowly chipping away, and now I'm ready. I want to go full time.
Yeah.
So hoping 2022 is a big year.
Well, I hope so for you as well. I was reading this quote, or I heard this quote the other day. It's most people live lives of quiet desperation. And I read that and I was like, holy shit, how much it resonates, I guess, probably, with lots of people who kind of get stuck in ruts. You go through high school, then you go through uni, and you get stuck in a hex there. And then once you leave uni, it's hard, you don't really get into the job that your degree was, in for. And then you live this job, and you kind of get sucked into working up the chain.
Yep.
And then before you know it, you've got a wife, or you have kids, and you're stuck in this little cycle of you can't break out of. But then you've got obligations. You can't really leave a job to start things or to follow things that you're passionate in, because it's not going to provide the bread that's going to provide for your family. And it's one of those,
absolutely,
you live lives of quiet desperation. They're just living in constant struggle, and then they get angry at themselves because they're stuck in this cycle of they can't break out of. And whether it takes a moment of to leave that job, and and to suck up,
make sacrifices,
make a sacrifice, and to leave the job and not make as much money, and to kind of you have to pay, but you still got obligations to pay back, your HECS debt, and you got to pay for your kids and all this sort of stuff. It's quite hard to kind of leave and to make a step towards something that you're passionate about, even if it doesn't provide the goods at first. It's something that takes time and put time into, put effort into something that you're passionate that produces rewards later down the track. Which is
absolutely, and I think
following now.
Yeah, and I think so many people fall into that trap, and that's where, when I say like with your goal setting, that's why goal setting is so important. And that's why you might have your 5-year vision, but then if you're not putting those steps in place to work towards that, you're exactly who you're explaining. You get to a position where you can't actually make changes because you have a mortgage, kids to look after, family to feed, all those things. And it's like, you don't want to be looking back in 5 years' time and going, oh shit, I didn't do any of the things that I said to get me there. And I guess for myself, like, until I did that activity where you do like a life review, I was working, as a financial planning assistant, and I could have, I guess my assumed next steps would be that I would be a financial planner. And until I did that, I realized I don't want to be a financial planner. I want to do more workshops and self-development stuff. And that's when I decided, I'm not going to pursue that career, and I'm just going to kind of sit tight in my current role because it's not stressful. It allows me to do the stuff on the side. And then I did take an opportunity last year where I then became like a team leader. I had 12 reports. And it was just too much. Like I was doing, 9-10 hour days. I was still trying to do, I would be doing that, and then I would, finish at 5, and then I'd start a virtual workshop at 5. Stressful. I now have that time back to be able to put back into my business. And even though the work I'm doing is not challenging, it's not, pushing me at all, I'm okay with that, because I know that it's, allowing me to fulfill my other goals and give me that time to grow that.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think it's important as well to, like, I'm kind of in a bit of a similar situation with, running this podcast and doing other sort of jobs on the side, is to make sure that the things that are on the side, like, they make my money, they make the bread, things that aren't going to impact the rest things that I'm more passionate about. So it's just that's going to make money. So I don't expect to go to that job and to change people's lives or to change the world. It's just something that's going to pay, I'm going to get a paycheck at the end of the week. I'm not going to be fulfilled doing it, but as long as I know that going into it, it's not going to really affect me as much.
Exactly. And I think when you know your purpose, when you know what your outcome is and why you're doing it, it changes your perception. So, as you said, you go there, it's not going to light the world on fire, but, it's allowing you to create a space for your passion, which, gives it that airtime to allow it to grow, and who knows what could happen from there. But it's when you just, are flogging yourself at one job, which is then taking away. So you're, from your passion, you're hating your job, but you're not even getting to do your passion. That's when, I guess, you have the ability to make those little small changes that can, make a difference. So it's being self-aware enough to recognize that.
Well, it's been great talking to you. I think we'll just wrap this up with the final question, which is the same. I don't know if you've listened to all the other ones. It's the same Uncle Frank question that we've had for the last 31 episodes. Got to double check.
Okay.
It is. You ready for it?
Yeah, hit me.
If money wasn't an object and nothing was impossible, what would you do?
Oh, well, I would just want to do I would love to do either just one-on-one mentoring and doing workshops all around Australia. That would be my ideal.
That's it. Simple.
Still for free if money wasn't an object.
Yeah. Well, if money was an object, you can have yourself, you can go wherever you want, help whoever and wherever. So
yeah, exactly. So that's not just restricted to Australia, around the world.
Yeah, there we go. Would you, you're focused with netball now. Do you see that there's space, I guess, there's commonalities between all other sports, right? So do you see yourself as expanding it outside netball?
Absolutely. So I do some work with the Department of Regional Sport, which reaches out to a lot of rural regions, and those are to all athletes. So I don't. If someone was to come out to me and from any sport, I've done swimming. I'm more than happy to do workshops for them. But I think for me, when I'm talking, I know who I'm talking to when I'm talking to netballers. It just makes it easy for me to get my message across. However, absolutely no issue, as you said, with any sport, because it's all the same. It doesn't matter what you do. Everyone's got the same obstacles that we can help with.
Awesome. Before we're tying it up with a nice bow, do you want to shout anyone out? Do you want to thank anyone and list off your social media, where we can find you at?
I guess I just thank my family. I wasn't prepared for that one. My partner. So you can find me on Instagram at thinking_rewired, and on Facebook, Thinking Rewired. I'm not even too sure what it is.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. No, I don't. I don't think I could handle another social media platform. But I do. I've got workbooks for NetSet, State of Mind, NetSet Going for Goal, and then also the generic versions. I do workshops virtually and face to face. And I'm just launching a group mentoring at the start of January. So if people are interested in that, they can head over to my website.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to link all of that stuff in all the descriptions of all the podcast apps that I've got. So make sure if you're listening and you want to find any more information, it's all in the description below.
Wicked. And thank you so much for having me, Matt.
No worries, Nick. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you everyone for listening.